Okay, cool. Well, I think just to start, take us back, give us a little bit of background on you, how your journey began, and how that led to where you are now as an artist.
Yeah, so my name is Cora Barhorst. I am the owner and artist of Cora B Gallery, which is kind of like there's no physical gallery. Everyone was always wondering. It was kind of a name I came up with when I was starting to kind of make my work and put it out there. But it's kind of what I call like the collection of my work. It started as um kind of the artwork I make and celebrity portraits, which were really in style like a few years ago. And then it kind of expanded into other gifts and merchandise. And more recently, like commissioned child portraits is like my main export, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Behind me, you can see one I'm working on right now in the studio. Kind of that classic Southern, I'm from Louisiana, and so they're really popular in like Southern households to get like a really stunning child portrait of your child, usually from like 3 to 7 is like the
Hmm.
age range that I most commonly do. But yeah, so that's kind of what I create in this studio. This is my like home painting studio. You can see
I love it.
behind me. Yeah, I have like my little prop wall over there with all of the different props I use for photos. I have my framed like magazine. Anytime I've been in a magazine, I have it over there. I have a new one I need to put up actually.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's what I've been doing for 3 years now, or a little more. Technically, I started in 2019, but I've been full time for 3 years. So,
Wow. Well, that's awesome. And you've made such a sanctuary of a studio. I know everyone listening can't see,
oh,
but
I love it.
tune into YouTube and you can see.
Yeah, I'll have to send you some pictures to share of my little studio, but it is like my little comfort zone. I have my desk and then like my a painting desk, and then behind me I recently set up like this one is just for content.
Oh, I love
So
that.
that way I can keep all my supplies and mess on one side. And then I've been trying to film everything I paint just to kind of share what I do and get it out there. And then this is actually my renovated, like it was a bedroom. So there's a whole closet that we took out the bar for holding clothes and everything. There's obviously no clothes in it. And we put in an old bookshelf and the entire, you can kind of see it over there, but you
Yeah.
can see we have an entire bookshelf that we renovated to be like all the different supplies that I use because I don't know, for all the artists out there, you realize it's a lot more than just paint and paintbrushes and canvas that you have to keep everything and keep the wheels running. I have like for a lot of the celebrity portraits I do, we have like pieces that go on it that are jewels and things like that. So I keep those
Mhm.
organized. I have all the stuff for shipping merchandise. I have all the stuff for when I do pop-ups, and all the products that I sell. And they all need a place to live. So yeah, I
Oh,
make a
yeah.
lot of use of this studio.
I feel like you're so organized. One thing I saw behind you is you have kind of a light camera setup. Can you touch a little bit on
Yes.
content creation, how that's evolved? And I mean, I think you have a really great brand. So how did you kind of come to this
Thank
place of like
you.
recording everything you're painting and all of that?
I would say I'm still trying to get better at recording and sharing what I do. And recently I've gotten even better. Quick shout out to this is a company called Canvas that
Yeah.
I really like. And you've probably seen their ads on Instagram. It's worth the money. I've bought so many phone and camera like holders over the years, and this one is definitely the best. I have it set up where I all the time will have my phone recording and it'll just sit right there and record everything I do. So that way, when I'm kind of like sitting and watching TV, I'll just edit the footage. Because I used to do everything sped up and time lapses. And I realized it was kind of one of those things I realized like it wasn't gaining much attention, those like time lapses all the time.
Yeah.
And that was always I was doing because I thought that was the easiest thing to record and took the least editing. And I was kind of, looking at what other people were having success with and what was having more success on my page. And I've started changing up like my recording style. And you can kind of see if you're in the footage, you might be able to see this, but not really. But right to the right of me, right here, I actually set up one of my light boxes that I use for photography.
Uh-huh.
And now it's permanently on so I can record and have better light. You can just see I turned it off.
Yeah.
So I even turned it off for this episode just so when we're recording, you can see me better. But it also helps with like recording the footage because the biggest thing with like content creation and sharing is if you're not showing it, no one knows about it.
Mhm.
Um, which is like the hardest thing to kind of do, especially when you can, it's really personal to share what you're creating, especially behind the scenes before it looks ready. Like the portrait behind me is far from ready. And so it's hard to like show day to day, like, oh, I promise it'll look so much better tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, one of my best friends who's been like one of my biggest supporters during creating like my brand is Katie Creative Co. on Instagram. Shout out
Mhm.
to her. But she is a social media manager, and really lucky to have her as a best friend because I'll get to listen in on everything she's doing for business and work. And I get to kind of take from her like a bunch of great advice. And she always says, like, if you're not showing it, no one knows you're doing it. Like, no one has any idea that you're doing it unless you put it out there in front of them all the time. So that's the biggest thing is I try to remember, like, I know it can feel awkward to share what you're doing or what you're starting to sell, but like until you tell people, no one knows.
Yeah. Well, something I think you've done, you just mentioned really well, is investing in the right tools. So you obviously mentioned two things you have. Are
Yes.
there any other things you've invested in, things that have worked, these things that haven't, just for other artists that are like, oh, I should probably get was it Canvas light? I get
Yes.
those sponsored ads all the time. So it's great to hear that it's good because I have like the
Oh,
jankiest
it's so
tripod.
worth it. And
But
they
what
are
else?
super helpful. Well, the first thing I invested in my business was like when I was still in college and money was way more tight. Um, the first thing I invested in was like a digital camera because I didn't even
Mhm.
have one and I wanted something better to take like the photos of the artwork. So what I actually did was like my parents paid for it, and then every time I got a commission, and I was in college and it was like part-time just for
Mhm.
fun, I would give them half, and then I paid it off in like a month or two, but I didn't have to, take
Pay
the
it up
big
front.
hit of a $700 camera. And since then, like that's one thing I've spent probably the most on, like supplies wise, is investing in really great camera tools to share my work. I think I have it right behind me, but I recently last year invested in a really nice Nikon camera for doing, because I now when I do my commissions, I do the photo portraits myself. And so I took camera. The other thing to invest in is like classes to make yourself better. It's not always about the tools, but investing like in yourself, especially as a small business owner or an artist. Because I had never taken a photography class. I just would point and shoot on auto and, do what worked best. And a local place in Baton Rouge called I Wander does photography lessons that were amazing. And I took a few of those and bought better equipment after taking the class and figuring out what might work, and worked with another artist in town who does photography. And she gave me advice about portraits. Another shout out, I guess, Jackie Axelson, you should have her on the podcast. She does like basically like photoshopped show like portraits, but they're more than that. There'll be like a whole tableau, if that makes sense, like of like
Yeah.
showcase. You definitely
I'll
would
look her
love to
up. That sounds
hear.
amazing.
Yeah, but there's so many people who like helped me figure out what it was I didn't even know about creating art and making things better. But yeah, those are investing in the right tools to get you where you need to be. Like there are always things like you want to save money on because you don't need to be spending $1 million to get started when you're a
Yeah.
small business. But those little things along the way where it pays off in the end is really important, especially when whatever it is to share your work.
Definitely. Well, in the past 3 years or 4 years, however long you've been doing this, you obviously have invested a lot of money in the photography, the content creation. What have you learned in those few years? Like, what have you seen change? What's working for you? Is it mostly on Instagram? Are you on other platforms? Like, what is your marketing strategy?
So the biggest thing was when I started during kind of COVID, like everyone was blowing up a lot on Instagram,
Mhm.
and it was all about having the most stuff to share, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Creating like more pieces and being at all the events and all of the things that were local that I could be. And that definitely like got me a place at the table, I would say. But the biggest thing I've learned, like, as things have kind of slowed down and become a little more reasonable and like you're not always hustling for the next thing, is that putting in the work to be the best kind of artist is really what's going to keep you being able to keep creating. And so taking the time to slow down and make sure that, especially with the child portraits, that every parent is super satisfied and it's exactly what they want and they have nothing but nice things to say about you and your work is really important. And like taking the time to make whatever you're creating exactly how you want, like not rushing to get it out just because it needs to be done, but actually creating like exactly what you wanted to share. And the other thing is that for most artists, I would say a lot of like sharing your work is about your community and the place the place you live, the places you go in your free time, and the people like you surround yourself with. And so, no matter where you are, creating that sense of like community, and like you can do that on Instagram to a certain extent, but also in person. Like people want to invest in the person behind the artwork and they want to
Hmm.
see what I'm up to and the successes I'm having. And it's people who, especially in Baton Rouge, like I've grown up with. Maybe I grew up with their kids and it's a parent, or maybe I grew up with their little sister and they're excited to see that I'm creating work and you know, so it's a lot about investing in the community where you are basing your work, because that's always going to be like the family you come back to.
Yeah, and I think that's something you're doing so well. I mean, even in the first few minutes of this podcast, I feel like you name dropped all these different people that you're friends with or that you've grown to know
Yeah.
through business connections. I mean, I would say you obviously have like friends and family and connections in that sense, but how have you also worked to build a community over time, as you've been full time? How do you work to kind of expand your community and meet more people?
That's a good question. Specifically, like in Louisiana, there is like a very big culture of like collaboration with different people. So
Mhm.
a lot of small businesses especially like in my city of Baton Rouge, are really willing to kind of like find ways to support each other, which I really loved. Like I've had like local restaurants who have let me put up work, and like little things here and there that we both share, and it only helps us both by them saying this new artist in and me having that backing of like I've had my work in like coffee shops and stuff before, just like kind of getting it out there. And then that kind of will always like lead you to different opportunities and people seeing you and wanting to be a part of it. The biggest opportunity I've gotten is there's a local, like one of our most popular boutiques is a place called Bella Bella.
Mhm.
And we had like a few things in common. We knew a few people and they had asked me about having a few things there. Well, then in 2022, they decided to open up a retail location that was all about kind of like gifting and home goods, which is super up my alley as an
Mhm.
artist. And they actually asked me to be like their signature artist. And that's just grown so much. You can see it all over my Instagram. We recently did like a whole Taylor Swift collaboration. And because we were able to like kind of slowly grow this relationship together, they have a lot of trust in me on whatever I'm sharing and bringing in is going to fit like their brand and their style. And then I have a lot of trust in them to be, holding my artwork and, having it on the walls and sharing it, which has been lovely because they have a whole team of people and marketing girl. And they have a whole team that like supports me and speaks highly of my work and is really proud to like work with me. And so that's been like super huge, is finding like really solid collaborations where you benefit a lot from each other.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's just so great. I think a lot of artists coming off of COVID were so focused on digital and content creation to grow a following and grow a brand. And that's awesome. But I do think there's something so impactful with like the in person, the connections, the collaborations.
Right.
That's how a brand can really, really grow. And I think that's something you're doing so well as you're using both to build out in your community, but also have this online presence that totally backs up. Like if someone sees you in person, they can then go to your Instagram and vice versa. It all
Right.
really seamlessly works together to help you grow.
Right. Being able to be in Baton Rouge while I'm doing this is really fantastic also, because like when I go to the grocery store, like people will like do a double take sometimes, especially when I'm dressed up nicer. People will recognize me more than when I just roll out of bed. But yeah, it's really nice when people recognize me, especially having kind of a distinctive name. Like not a lot of people are named Cora.
Yeah.
And I hear it, they're like, "Oh, are you Cora B?" And that's exciting.
Yeah. I mean, that means you're really creating a strong brand image. And I mean, that's a testament to you because that's hard to do. And I think you're doing a really great job.
Right.
Something I'd love to touch on kind of building off of that is I want to talk about your commission process, but I want to talk about how you get leads. So obviously you're doing these things in person, you're on
Yeah.
social media. Like, how are a lot of these people finding you? Is it more word of mouth in person? Is it online? Like, what's kind of working for you right now to get leads?
So the main thing with like finding commissions is, like I said, like sharing all the time on Instagram. The more I share
Mhm.
and the more I share the kind of work I want to do, I have so much more success, is what I found. Like, and sharing exactly like the portraits that are exactly like how I want to be seen and the type of
Mhm.
portraits I want to make. Um, but putting it out on Instagram, people like kind of slowly finding you, especially with art, you have to remember like one post usually doesn't do it just because of the nature of like how much things cost. So like if someone's going to commit to doing an $1,800 portrait from me, they really want to see success doing it for 10 other portraits, not just one.
Right.
Um, so for example, like the one behind me actually is I did for free. Because I hadn't done one where they were showing the hands and had the full body and kind of a different style of dress. Like I really wanted that like vintage, old-fashioned look.
Yes.
So I was working with like a mentor and she was like, well, put out the piece like you want to make and have that as an example so people will see it. And putting out this one got me like 5 commissions. And I wouldn't say always do things for free. This was kind of a special circumstance. And to be fair, this little girl, her name is Eleanor, her mom had gotten her painted in my very, very first set of child portraits, and she got one made for each grandma. So it was a really good client to thank for, taking a big chance on me when I first started. But I asked her if I could paint her daughter again now after, years of kind of improving, and the mom was willing to let me decide like the style, the look, the outfit, um, and was willing to give me that freedom since I was offering to do it as a gift. And so yeah, like people have to be able to visualize what the commission could really look like and even like what the commission process is, especially with something that's going to be like a higher value item. Like they want to see the process that goes into it, sketches, concept boards, like all the things that make them feel comfortable before I start painting, and seeing other children who, in my case, I guess I would say like other finished paintings that would be similar to theirs so they can trust that what they have in mind would be better than they could imagine.
Yeah, and I think that's so smart. And I mean, I think the way you went about it by basically offering a great client something for free that is perfectly aligned with what you want so that you can start putting that out in the world is so smart because I think a lot of artists get trapped on the hamster wheel of like saying yes to commissions that aren't aligned. And so I think what you did is you
Right.
were like, I know what I want to do. Let me put it out there and I'm basically just pushing the right, like showing the customers like this is what I do. If you want this, I'm your girl versus like I'll say yes to anything. And so I think what you're doing is so
Right.
smart. And really, I think that's why you have such a distinctive brand. Like before today, I just knew you on Instagram and I was like, I feel like I know exactly who this person is in terms of like what you create. Like you just it's clear. Like I
Yeah.
saw that painting behind you in your studio and I was like, okay, yep, like she's not like it'd be crazy if I saw like some, you know, red colorful abstract or something. I'm like, this
Right.
is you. And you just have done such a great job of putting that out there so that if I wanted to come to you and get a portrait done, I know exactly what to expect.
Right. And I'm super excited because, like I said, creating these, people gave me like their confidence about creating some other works. And so I have a few more in the studio that are already like started that are going to be that style, and parents
Mhm.
who are comfortable like taking the chance on me because even seeing one piece with that more, like classic look. So the studio is very full right now. You can't see, but I have like 12 new portraits that are going to be being done this fall that I'm really excited for. And I've been really like in the past year, even I redid my branding. And I had always like kind of evolved my branding, if that made sense, like
Mhm.
grown it as I went, slightly changed things. But this past year, my friend Katie, she redid her branding. And when she did, I was like, oh, I have jealousy now. Like now I want to redo mine. And she had worked with a brand designer who I adore and follow on Instagram, but I didn't have like the money to invest in that at the moment. So I took like a few weeks, which I probably could have saved money by having someone else do it, honestly. But I took a few weeks to decide like, okay, what do I not like about my website, my messaging, the copywriting I'm putting out there, and kind of took a step back on all of my work to decide like how I want to put myself out there as an artist. You know, even with making the content of videos of making content that was a little more professional looking, like how do I want to show up on social media and in person? Like I try to show up. Sometimes I'm running errands. Like I went yesterday from working out to the framer, but I try to show up in person around town, like presenting myself, you know, as like a full brand. We always joke about it, like even with the clothes I buy. Um, my family jokes about being like, oh, that's not very Corby Gallery, like a dress I'll pick out or something. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, like if I saw me in this, like that's not really. And that's one thing about creating, I would say, like as artists, you don't have to be as concerned with like the way for other businesses you're trying to target like a really specific brand and it might be really different from the vibe of the person behind it. I feel like as an artist, when you're creating your personal brand as an artist, you're really showing what you like to create and yourself. And
Exactly.
if you're not, I feel like if you're not doing that, that is how you start to feel like you're showing up inauthentically. And so partially like that's what I've been aiming for, is like showing up like really as myself. This is what I like to wear anyways. This is the kind of stuff I would like on my walls if it was just me, you know, the kind of styling I like of like, this is how I would style my house if there was no, if there was no Corby Gallery. This is the same like
Right.
kind of styling I like, with the vintage, the colorful, the like little modern pieces, the bright looks. And so I think like that's a big part of branding yourself as an artist.
Yeah, and I think that's so great to hear. Like, I love your example of, oh, that's not very Cora B gallery, because I feel like I've had that moment before too, where I feel like it's finally clicked, where I'm like, people just want to see me. And that doesn't mean they need to see me like sweating for my workout class, but they do want to see like,
Right.
what are you doing? And so it's like filtered, but not overly filtered. It's like I'm gonna present
Right.
myself as who I like as myself, but also the self I want people to see. Like I want to put this brand forward of like who I am, what I do. Like I'm a podcaster. I love talking to artists. And I've started even just having
Right.
this shift of like I work from home, but I still get dressed every day. And like just
Yes.
that, I'm like, okay, I'm embodying who I want to be. Like if I want to be like a really successful podcaster, let's say, like uh, what do I want my world to look like? And it's not me in like
Right.
sweatpants, it's me in like a cute little dress. And so just wear a cute little dress every day. And like all of a sudden you just feel
Yes.
better. And then you're also like, I can make content because I feel like I'm embodying who I want to be versus just like what I could do right now.
And like I said, you definitely, another shout out to my friend Katie, but she does social media management and she's always giving me a lot of inspiration because, for me, I have so many props because I have the artwork and there's
Hmm.
such clear like props that go with that, like paints and paintbrushes. But with her, like she does social media management and her only real prop would be like a phone or a computer. And when we did a photo shoot together, it was so awesome to work with her and be inspired. It's so good to have like a best work friend. It only makes you better. And we are different but similar in like our styles. But it's so fun to have her where she had to create kind of a whole brand of like who she is as a person, and following her on Instagram every day. Sometimes I check her Instagram before I start posting anything because I'll be like, oh, what's she posting? And she works from home. Obviously I don't want to get paint on all my clothes, so I don't dress up a lot, but I do kind of have like a painting wardrobe
Yeah.
of clothes. But she, everything she wears is so authentically her. She recently worked with like a stylist to even like kind of put together like, oh, I'm not really dressing as myself, like what do I dress like? And she's been sharing on Instagram, even the like jewelry she wears in the morning to get ready. And it's one of those things that's like you don't realize how like much of an impact that makes on people who see you every day, like recognizing you, recognizing your style, and having a trust in like knowing you, especially if they're going to be working with you on a big project or a big commission. And so that's what I kind of try to like embody. And like I said, if you make the brand, if you go by what you like and make the brand, like very much about you and yourself, then it becomes like a very natural thing to do.
Yeah.
You pick things that you like and aesthetically, and as artists, like it's a lot easier to do that because all of us kind of know what we like visually more than the average person. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's the main takeaway from all this because I'm sure some people are listening and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I have to like get a cute wardrobe and all of a sudden like be so put together." And it's like we're not saying that. We're just saying once you start embodying like the brand, which the brand is you. So once you just start like being true
Right.
to you and being okay putting that out there, things start to click. And I think that's the hardest part
Right.
is like being comfortable putting aspects of yourself on there that aren't just the art, but that's what builds the trust. And that's what actually builds out the brand is people seeing a little bit of behind the scenes, whether it's you and what you look like and what you do, or like your interests and your inspiration. Like there's a lot of routes you can go with it, but it's
Right.
so important to open that door because that trust is what is going to get someone that has never met you to want to support you and buy from you.
Correct. Like the more people see you and the more you share of yourself and any art you do, just being like something you create and love. Like when I make something, or in the past when I've made something that I know I didn't love, I wasn't proud of like sharing it online. And so no one would see it. And then like the more you're able to kind of like find what you create that you're really proud of people seeing, like that's what you want to share all the time. It becomes a very like natural process, I would say.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I want to get super like specific with you. You are
Yeah.
clearly taking a ton of commissions. You mentioned you have, I think, 12 commissions for the fall.
Yeah.
How are you staying organized and what is your commission process? Like if I was coming to you, I think a lot of artists want to take commissions, but then they get overwhelmed by all the logistics. Like what is your process? How do you make your clients happy? How do you balance all of it?
So I would say my number one is HoneyBook. I don't know if anyone out here is a HoneyBook user. My friend Katie, obviously, got me onto HoneyBook, and I was kind of having like overwhelm of like, okay, this project's from here, this project's from here. Like, how do I keep track of it? It's such a long process for me to create a portrait. Um, like you'll see, I don't think any of the ones behind me are from super long ago, but like there's one portrait that's like up on the walls that hasn't started that actually is from like over a year ago because we started it and we decided that it wasn't coming out how we wanted. The child was too young and it didn't match what the parent wanted, so we like put a pause on it and are going to restart it this fall with like an older picture. So I mean, some of my projects go on for months and months. They're not something that I create in a week. So having HoneyBook be able to keep up with every email that I send to the parents, all of the content, I send photos through there, sketches. Then I can look back and I'm not tracing through texts and emails trying to find information from one parent that we said one time about what color background we want to do. It can get, I mean, completely overwhelming when you kind of try to do that. And it already is overwhelming enough having so many open commissions. But yeah, I mean, HoneyBook, like it's awesome. It can take invoices so I can keep track of exactly how much they paid me. I can do automatic invoicing, which is one of the best because since I have like higher ticket items, some people want to split it up into more than two payments, which is totally understandable. Like even $900 payments on one of the expensive paintings is a lot. So I can make it every week that they only pay $100, and then
Yeah.
in a few months it's paid off, and then it's easier on both of us, and they can set it to automatic. So that's been a huge difference, is that. And then I'm also a very like brainstormy person, so I keep like a pad of paper underneath my computer, and I just like dump thoughts on there and type them up whenever I'm like brainstorming anything, my list of things to do in the week, kind of everything like that. I'll dump out all my ideas and then go back through and decide like what I need to do each day. But yeah, I'm a Google Calendar girl and I love Honeybook for like keeping my projects organized because even when I have smaller commissions, it's really helpful for like even keeping track of like, okay, this $50 commission is only going to take me an hour or two, but make sure I don't forget to do it, you know?
Yeah, I think having systems like that that make your life easier and hold you accountable are great. And I also love that it makes you more professional for the clients as well. Like it's automatically billing
Right.
them the way they need to be billed. Like Honeybook is a
Yes.
great recommendation. I hope a lot of artists are taking notes and signing up for that because I think that'll save a
Yeah,
lot of
sign
time.
up. If I have a link, I'll send it to you because I am singing Honeybook's praises all the time. It also is really great for integrating like with your website because you can do things where people can download my portrait package document and it'll send me an email telling me someone's interested and it sends them information, which is super wonderful because then it kind of is a passive way to like have people automatically hear about what I do. Because the biggest thing with like my work is honestly that a lot of commissions that people start and want to talk about do end up falling through because it is like a higher ticket item.
Mhm.
So having that support of like something to keep track of like, okay, this person has paid or what's the level of interest they really showed? Did they just download this document or were they really like pretty passionate about starting a piece for themselves, you know, and being
Yeah.
able to look on that information is really all that data that you can understand from different clients is so important and helpful.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's helped you evolve over time too. So that's fantastic. Definitely writing that one down. Kind of going off of all of this, you've shared so much great just information. What has worked really well for you? What have been your most successful moments? Like looking back on the past, I guess, 3 years of being full time, what are just really successful moments that have made you proud and glad to be doing this?
I think the proudest I have been of my business is actually you can see it behind me, but I was on the cover of our like local magazine.
Yeah.
And that was like a really, really special moment, not only because it was like you can't pay for the advertising of getting on the cover of their magazine, like that was completely a surprise. They actually came it's a funny story actually, and I'll tell it, but it's our local magazine in Baton Rouge called In Register, and it's kind of just shows like the lifestyle of people in our city. And every year they do an arts and art, like arts in the city, day in the life of the arts. I'm sorry, day in the life of the arts issue. And I'd always thought like, how cool is that? I wonder how you even get to be a part of that. And last spring they emailed me on like a Tuesday and asked if they could do a photo shoot on that Saturday. And I had plans the whole week. I was supposed to be in another city that weekend and I canceled it all. And I was like, you know what? I don't know if this picture is going to be this big. Like it really could have been like this large. I didn't know because like they include so many people in the magazine. I was
Mhm.
like, it could be a whole page. It could be only a picture this big. Whatever it is, I'm going to put all my effort into this week, like getting the studio looking beautiful. So when they come for the photo shoot, um, the people who did it actually also offered and sent me all of the photos for free, which was incredible, like having a little mini photo shoot. And I even made a joke to the woman on the phone. I was like, I'm glad someone dropped out and I got the spot. And she was like, oh no, that's not like we just, you know, it kind of comes up fast and we just, this is how we do it. So they came over. I definitely, you know, we did the photo shoot and they did like a little mini interview of me and it only took like maybe an hour and a half. We, you know, it felt like it went really fast. And then they called me and said they had a surprise that they wanted to drop off over at my house. And it was the cover of the magazine printed out. And I was the cover story for Arts in the City. And that was like really, really special. You can see it's me really close up
Yeah.
painting a child portrait. Um, and I had to call the mom in the picture and I was like, so I forgot to tell you your child's portrait is going to be on the cover of a magazine because we didn't know at the time. Like, I was like, I actually didn't know. Is that okay? And she was like, that's amazing. I mean, the good thing is pretty much everyone who wants their child painted is very comfortable with them being on like social media, especially
Yeah.
since it's painting and it's not directly them. But it was just really special because it was not only like an incredible opportunity. I mean, I've felt like famous ever since. I think I have like 50 copies of the magazine still floating around my studio, just in my house and my parents' house, my grandparents' house, like my friends' parents' houses. They all kept them. And like it was a special moment kind of for everyone to share in my success. But it was also really nice to feel like my community saw something special in me and wanted to promote me because they really kind of take turns with like every year it's a different type of the arts that they promote. Sometimes it's theater, sometimes it's dance. And it was kind of the year for a painter to be on the cover and they chose me and it was just like a really fantastic moment. And so it's pretty much the favorite thing in my studio is that framed picture of the magazine cover because I don't know. Being on a magazine cover was really
That's
just
amazing.
really special.
No, that's awesome. Well, kind of going off that, what do you see next for your business? What are you looking forward to, planning ahead for? Like any big projects in the works? Like what are you just excited about?
One thing I'm really excited about is I think I'm gonna spend the next few years, like I said, kind of honing my craft and taking a few less commissions that are a little more like higher ticket items that I can spend more time on because sometimes I hate when I am feel like I'm up against a deadline with a portrait and I don't have the time for it to like live in the studio and come back to it and decide what I want to improve. And I've been like honing my style a little more. So in this next year, that's kind of what I'm planning on is kind of being a little more picky with the commissions I take and still, taking in as many as I can, but kind of showing exactly what I want to do and trying to get that kind of commission to come back to me, if that makes sense. Like sharing the ones that I'm the most proud of, um, the most things that I want to like create and come back to, a lot more of that like vintage aesthetic and a little less like contemporary with the styling
Mhm.
and you know, trying to learn a little more about painting and how to make the really pieces come alive. Like my works have grown so much in the past, I would say like 3 years, that I'm kind of excited to see where my talents can go if I have a little more like creative advice and intentionality with creating the pieces.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's amazing that you're at that point because I think it takes a lot of hard work to get there where you can really start to refine your brand, say no to things that aren't a good fit, and
Right.
really attract things that are. So I think that's a testament to how well you've, put yourself out there in your community and online and just really built a strong company. So you're killing it.
Thank you.
Well, I love to conclude every episode with a lesson or a tip or something that you can share with our audience that's really helped you to get where you are. It can be a tool, it's really open ended, but anything goes.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because you haven't shared
Honestly,
like 80 things.
yeah, my favorite tip might be like find some friends who are happy to talk about your business with you. I know for me personally, like I'm I'm very extroverted and I externalize like thoughts and ideas. I really don't make a decision on my own, hardly ever. I really like to talk it through with a friend, and that's where my like best ideas come from. So, all of my best friends have been so loving to talk to me endlessly about ideas I have for my business. And specifically, like I said, my friend Katie, gonna have to give her a big shout out. Even though we do such different work, like she doesn't paint at all, but having a friend who's willing to listen to you and brainstorm with you is so awesome because especially when you work alone all day, you want someone to be there to kind of like build you up and give you ideas. And two minds are always better than one, and at the end of the day it is your decision and your brand. But there's just so much to be learned from working with the people around you and brainstorming and coming up with ideas through different avenues like that. So I would say like friends are like the most important part of my life. I love my friends, and especially like work friends, artist friends, um, and artist friends online who will support you and like your work and share it is super important.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I'm such a big proponent of community building and like connecting people. Obviously, like I'm doing this so more people can hear your story. But I think it
Yeah.
it can be a super lonely business. But I think every time I go through periods of being alone and like really in the work and in my studio, I don't feel nearly as inspired as when I push myself to go connect
Right.
with people, get coffee. Like I think people think of those things as like, oh, that's I should be working, but it's like no, like I've gained more insight or become more inspired or had like my next big idea from like something as simple as like grabbing lunch with a friend or like grabbing lunch with an artist
Right.
who wants to talk about ideas. And so I think that's honestly just such a great piece of advice.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. But
Yeah, we'll
yeah.
share with the audience how everyone can learn more about you, find you, order a commission, what are all of your accounts,
Yeah.
email, all that.
So always, my biggest social media is always Instagram. I'm always on there on my stories, sharing videos of my work. I'm trying to share as much as I can every day and just, share what I do and connect with other artists. I love following other artists and kind of just like surrounding myself with that. So on Instagram, I'm Cora B Gallery, and you can always shoot me an email at artwork at Cora B Gallery. And I have my website, also Cora B Gallery.
Love it.
And yeah, really on all social media, that's where you can find me. It's just the one name. I'm stuck in it now. I can't change it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was so fun, and I just really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Have a good day.